Good afternoon, Open Door Church family. Welcome to the first Open Door Church's Town Hall. With us this afternoon, we have Pastors Alyssa, Pastor John, Pastor Kalina. I'm Vicki Plasker. I'm your chair of the Open Door Church's board. So let's begin with our first question that was submitted. Oh no. It went away. Can you tell us about your families of origin and where you're from? Pastor Kalina?
My family came, I can say that I'm a mutt. Um, my great fathers, one was English and one was a German, and both of my parents, great each of them. And I am from the island of Tonga. They went all the way. They were adventurous. They went all the way down to the South Pacific Islands. And if you know where that is, you have Australia, which is like a big pancake. But to the east, northeast of Australia, there's a lot of teeny islands, just like water lilies on the vast ocean of the Pacific. And one of those islands is Tonga, which is which is south of Samoa, and everybody knows Samoa because it's part of it was under American protectorate. And that's where I came from. My came here to in 1983. I came out here. I didn't ever dream of coming to America. My father thought that I would be happier here in America because I was pretty liberal. For being an islander, I went to a liberal high school, and I live out in a village, and the high school's in downtown, and the cultural change every day. I learned English in that high school. It's an English speaking school. So what I bring home is so different from home, and English and Tongan speaking was in my high school years really changed me from the way how I was brought up and the way how I went forth with life. I was very liberal and did things that no women in my age were doing it in my village. So I was pretty adventurous, and I blame it on my white descendants because they went all the way down to Tonga. And so I was pretty adventurous. The country that I wanted to go to is New Zealand, but my father thought that maybe America, United States is good for me, very far from Tonga. My older brother was already here, so I came to join him. So I have, everybody probably curious how many children I have. I have 6 of them. So many. They're all adults. And my husband, I've talked about him who is now in a foster home. He's not well. We have been married for about 32 years. It's quite a long time. And my children who are in the States right now, I have 3. My 6 children, 4 of them are girls and 2 are boys. And the 3 children that I still have in the United States, 2 daughters, and they live in Las Vegas, and 1 son who lives in Seattle. But I have 2 children in Auckland, New Zealand. And my children are adventurous and very liberal like me. They have dreams to do stuff with. It's so beyond whatever I see them that they can do. But I have seen them realizing some of those goals. So I am just excited to be here in this country because this country, the United States, allow you to be able to do more with your life. And despite many things that I've been facing the difficulty in living life in the complicated social structure here. There is danger everywhere. If you are in my color hue, you have to learn to be able to maneuver around and be safe. And that's one of my dreams and prayers every day, that my children will be safe. And they're still alive now, struggling with life, doing the same thing that I do. But then, I see that as not a struggle, but it's part of life. We have our calling, and every day is a struggle. If it is not a struggle, you are not living life. To live life every day, Jesus called us and challenged us with work to do. So that's a little snippet about where I come from. I'm a mutt. I'm a mix. So, I don't know. Many people say that I have the phenotypic of a Native American, and I own it. Maybe my ancestors were from here too. And I'm going to pass it on to, yeah.
Pastor Alyssa, tell us about your family.
Sure. I was born in Las Vegas, Nevada, and until I was 2, we moved back and forth to Oregon and Nevada about every 6 months because my dad wanted to move to Oregon and my mom wanted to be with family. So we just kept going back and forth until my sister was born when we were living in Albany when I was 2.5. And a fun fact there is I actually named my sister because my mom was the only one giving birth in the hospital at the time. So I got to take the baby to get its first bath, right? And so I wheeled in my sister to my mom with the nurse afterwards and said, look, it's baby Brittany. And so they didn't think they could change the name after that. So after she was born, we moved back to Nevada where we lived for a few years until I was in about 3rd grade. And then we moved to Albany where we stayed. And my parents still live there. My grandparents still live there. And my mom works for the elementary school in Albany. She works in the library. And my dad works for the power company. So both good jobs. And my sister lives in Phoenix, Arizona, and she works as a middle school math teacher. I pray for her every day because those are 2 things I couldn't do, middle schoolers and math. So she's got a big heart and she's embracing teaching in this pandemic time. And she has a fiance and they plan to get married in next March. So I'm looking forward to being on that journey with her. That's a little bit about who my family is.
Thank you, Pastor Alyssa. Pastor John, tell us about the Flemings.
Well, let's see. I was born in Illinois, central Illinois. My father was a pastor in this church at that time, and he really loved music. So we moved to Texas twice, actually. The first time so that he could go to Southern Methodist University and get a master in sacred music. And then we moved back to the Midwest and then back to Texas, all by the time I was in 2nd grade. And I grew up in Richardson, which is a suburb that's very close into Dallas. As you travel north from Dallas, it's the first suburb that you come to on US 75. And my parents still live in the house that we bought when we moved to Texas. First United Methodist Church was our home, and it's an extremely large church, about 6,500 member church. So that's kind of where I cut my teeth in many different ways, including in ministry. Started volunteering as a young adult after being away from the church for a few years, and did not have any intention in going into ministry, but here I am. So I my wife Rana and I moved here in June after both of us being in Texas for a very long time. And so it's exciting and we're happy to be here. But we will be missing our daughters quite a bit, who are both adults and live in the Dallas area. So, and we have 2 pets. We have 2 dogs, Buddy and Mia. So there you go. Oh, I have a brother and a sister. My sister lives in the Oklahoma City area, and my brother lives in the Salt Lake City on the Wasatch Front. It's a beautiful place to visit. There you go.
Wonderful. Thank you all for sharing your family backgrounds. The next question, how has your image of God changed over time? Pastor John, do you want to address that first?
Sure. That's a really interesting question. And I don't know. I think, like a lot of young people, at least young people that grew up sort of in Anglo churches, predominantly Anglo churches, a lot of us had the same concept of God, kind of this old man with a white beard sitting on a throne someplace. And that is not even remotely close to my image of God now. So I think of God as, it's interesting, being part of this worship series that we're doing right now, I really think of God more as being itself, in a sense, rather than a specific kind of being. So my image isn't really so much of an image as it is kind of a state of being. And I'll leave it at that for now.
Pastor Alyssa, has your image changed over time?
I like the way that Pastor John said it, because I've been thinking about it that way, but not been able to articulate it, that I don't have a specific picture of who God is, but more of just, I feel like my relationship with God has changed and getting to know God's characteristics over time. And so at 17, when I first started going to church, it was really just God is love. And that's what was always shared and talked about. And so I think over time, it's now God is not just love, but God is also friend and creator and partner and all of the different attributes that I think you just keep adding to your pot as you grow in relationship with God. Yeah.
Pastor Kalina?
Vicki, my image of God has changed a lot. And if I have to use obese as an example for us, that's what I see God is for me now. God is used to be very, very, very small. But now has grown. The image of God is just obese, won't describe it. It's just huge, humongous. It's so big that I cannot imagine it's the unimaginable God that I am viewing right now. And that's why I'm so excited about Open Door, because I see that as, part of our ministry. I said, now God is getting bigger in Salem, and we are going to continue to bring that picture of God's unimaginably indescribable, as John and Elisa has described. It's a God that we cannot put in a box, any huge box that we try. We can try, but that's not God. If it's boxed, that's not God. Thank you, Vicki.
Thank you, Pastor Kalina. The next question is an interesting one, Pastor Alyssa. Tell us something about yourself that would surprise us.
I had a hard time with this one. I've been thinking a long time because I feel like my colleagues have an unfair advantage in the fact that they just got here. And so I've been sharing my life with y'all for 3 years now. But I think one thing that people may not know about me is I started playing in a bell choir when I was in second grade and have popped in and out of numerous bell choirs throughout the year and even started my own at one point in college at a church and taught others how to play and directed. And so, yeah, bell choir holds a special place in my heart, and I'm not sure that's something people would know about me. Yeah.
Surprising.
There you go.
What would surprise us, Pastor John?
Oh, there's so many. This is sort of my stock answer when I get asked this question. So I'll start with this one, and then when I was young, before I went into ministry, I was working for a company called The Container Store. And it was a really great place to work, but I'm not even sure how I got hooked up with this, but while I was working for The Container Store, in their warehouse, I had weekends. I had a lot of unusual for somebody in retail business. I had some time on the weekends, and somehow I got introduced to this guy who ran a company that sent DJs out to do parties for weddings and other events. And so I went through the training and auditioned, and I made it. And so for about a year and a half, on almost every weekend, I was out setting up and DJing dance music at parties, and especially weddings. And I could tell you some stories about that.
Pastor John, the DJ. Pastor Kalina, what would surprise us?
Well, as there's so many things that will surprise you about me because I'm new. But one of the words that describe, people of my country at a time when Christianity came as savage, and I don't like that. I don't really like that. But just to bring that savage image into you, because I do one of my favorite things to eat when I was at my delicacy to eat is pig's brain. And that's, and it's the savage in me. I'm just saying that. But, for our church setting, that's its, yeah. But I just want you to know that I am currently the chair for Core Commission of Religion and Race. Anybody who's interested in doing that. As of by the end of this month, then I've completed to move out. So I just want you to know about that. I want to bring you out here in this setting. We would like volunteers and people to join this committee.
Thank you, Pastor Kalina. Okay, so the next question, is it possible for us to leave politics out of worship? What do you think, Pastor John?
I think the most important part of the question, and it's a very, very interesting question to me, because I'll just be honest with you, I have been in places before where I was sort of accused of being political in a sense, but I didn't really see it that way. I mean, I felt like I was just preaching about what the scriptures were helping us understand, and then trying to apply them to life situations, and particularly social life situations. So I think that the gospel and what we do in worship is inherently communal. It's never individual, even though individuals have their own experience of worship. I don't think it's possible for us to think of worship as something that is only an individual experience. So everything that we do in worship has to be communal, and therefore, in some sense, has to be social, and therefore is going to talk about how it is that we relate to each other as human beings, not just within the church, but outside the church. So that's part of the answer. So I think that we can't help but be at least a little bit political, because politics to me is is the ability of people to relate to one another in social situations. Now, the other thing about that is that I feel like it's important for us to acknowledge that that if talking about, say, social issues, and that's been probably my greatest experience of that, when people have sort of said, you're being political, if I say talk about race or human sexuality or different things like that, which I don't have a tendency to go to sort of like those social issues a whole lot, unless I see them being brought up in the scriptures. And so what I'd say about that is, if talking about social issues means that a person is being political, then we would have to say that the Bible is a political document because it talks about social issues. It talks about the way that human beings relate to one another, and things like that. So I don't know that I think it's possible for us to completely leave politics, in that sense, out. But it is possible for us to leave politics out in the sense that a lot of us like divisive kinds of politics that we it seems particularly prevalent right now, but I don't know that that's necessarily true. We've always, as a nation, for instance, I think we've always had different struggles that were like that, unless there was something outside, some sort of common, like during World War II, a common enemy that we all had to bind together and do that. I think the history says that we've always had trouble with that idea. So that was a kind of a rambling answer, and maybe somebody else could clarify that a little bit or add their own voice. I don't know.
Either of you like to add anything to Pastor John's answer?
I think I like what you're saying about the worship being communal and also the social issues, because I think for me, like, that's one reason I am a part of the Methodist Church, is for its for all the ways that it has been active in social justice issues that come up. But I don't necessarily see that as political. So I think it gets kind of messy in the middle, maybe. And maybe that's why politics gets seen in worship, or it's hard to separate things sometimes. But I think that the way people relate to one another is really shown throughout the Bible, and that we couldn't leave that communal aspect out, or the response aspect out. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of hard to articulate, but a very good, challenging question.
Yeah, you did a good job with it. Pastor Colleen, anything to add to that?
The question is it possible to not, and I think John put it, it is possible to leave out the really bad, horrible things in politics, but I don't believe it is possible if the core of Methodism is, the teaching of John Wesley. And John Wesley was always into social justice. And we might have a big, huge problem finding real example in our time if we're going to leave politics out. I mean, we will be fabricating stuff. But we need to bring good and a current and real testimonies into to our to explain it. As John is saying, the context of the Bible in our context, as play out in our context. We won't be able to avoid it. So,
hey Vicki, could I add just something?
Sure.
One of the ways to answer this might be, and I think if I remember the question, the way that it came to us, there was a little bit about, could there be a place where we could create worship that was intentionally apolitical? Maybe that's a good way to say it. That doesn't necessarily address social issues or something like that. And I thought about trying, have I ever experienced that personally in a way that was not just about comfort, but was also about other things. And so it was 19 years ago that Rana and I were part of a group that went to the Taizé community in France, where worship, in a sense, is deliberately apolitical. And so, 3 times a day we would go for these prayer services and sing together. And there was something really amazing about all these different people who were coming from all over the world. The week that we were there were 3,000 people from all over the world and 30 different countries. And being able to set aside some of our religious differences, because even though it was almost all professing Christians, lots of different Christian traditions. So I do think it is possible for us to create worship that makes an attempt to be more about unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace, and that's the primary objective. But I don't think that's the only way you can't ever have just that. There has to be a time when the church has to intentionally engage in what it means for humans to be in community with each other outside the church. And so I think you could have both, but you couldn't have just the other, just the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace kind of worship. So
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Mhm.
And
Maybe one Sunday I hear. Thank you, Dawn.
those are the questions that were submitted, I believe.
So we have a question for you, Vicki.
Okay.
And I want to make sure I phrase it right. So what we'd like to know is, do you have a dream for Open Door Churches? And if you have a dream, could you talk a little bit about how that might reflect the way that we relate to each other? So, like, are we going to remain as individual congregations that are bound together, or do you see that as someday becoming like one kind of conglomerate?
Mm-hmm. I do have a dream, and my dream is that we will continue to grow together. The more we learn about each other as church families, the more we learn to respect and love each other's unique differences. And I do see us as one. I already see us as one. We're just in different locations. Geography is really all that separates us. And my dream is that we will be more and more involved with each other. It is not the goal or the role of Open Door Churches to act as governors over what each church is doing. We want our role to be more like helping you get the word out, helping with communication, so that when one church is doing a ministry, we don't want to come in and take it over or run it. We want to help you get the word out so that all of the churches are invited to join in, so that we're all involved in ministries, but not as together, but not to take away or stifle any ministries that any of the churches are doing individually.
Good.
Thank you so much for joining us for the first Zoom town hall. We hope that there will be more, and please feel free to submit your questions to any of the pastors, and we'll try to answer them for you. Have a good Sunday.
Hi, everybody.